Welcome back. I hope you all had a chance of trying out the Icelandic kleinur and enjoyed them as well as the coffee. I see we've lost a few. Perhaps it's they enjoying the kleinur too much. I don't know. We'll see if they come back. But it's my honor to introduce to you the next speaker, Alex Stitt, who is director of the Heritage Center at Lloyd's Register Foundation, here to speak about the lessons we can learn from the past that will help us shape a safer ocean economy for tomorrow. Alex, the floor is yours.
Thank you all. I'm not a great fan of lecterns, but can you hear me at the back? Because I haven't got any slides. But what I want to do is briefly introduce the Lloyd's Register Foundation and talk about some of the problems that some of the issues that we have as a funding body, and then to give a little case study of a problem, and then which will lead into the panel discussion later on. So I hope to be brief. Lloyd's Register Foundation is a medium-sized, London-based foundation. We have about £40 million, so 45 million euros a year to give away. We're independently funded, based on a 260-year-old organisation called Lloyd's Register, which has been asking and answering one question all that time, which is this ship safe to go to sea? And if not, why not? And about 12 years ago, we got an endowment and all the equity in this organisation in order to fund projects that engineer a safer world. So this is an amazing privilege and to work in this space, and particularly to work in a space where government funding is increasingly constrained and where philanthropic funding is controlled largely by individuals, people, more and more arbitrary individuals. But it's actually a very complicated job in many ways. But luckily, I was introduced to the University of the Arctic by an old friend, Stephen Heel, who may be listening. I'm from somewhere in northern Iceland, in which case, hello, Stephen. And together we have introduced a fellowship program to fund learning from the past initiatives within the Arctic to try to foreground indigenous voices and lost histories so that policymakers of today can learn more about tomorrow, in order to make better decisions about tomorrow. And Stephen and I met 31 years ago at business school, and 31 years ago, it seemed that money and wealth was going to be the solution to all the world's problems if we could only have more money. But now, 31 years later, I'm in a job where that becomes increasingly not the case. And we spend a lot of our time at the foundation asking one very simple question, which is, what can money do in this problem? And increasingly, the problems that we confront, money is a necessary but by no means sufficient element to dealing with the issues that we face. And so I'd just like to leave that question in your heads while I give you a brief case study. So what can money do? And we have money and some connections and some expertise, but we have money, and what can money do is our question. So I'll give you a brief case study, and I promise it does relate to learning from the past. So on the 9th of February 1945, a unique event occurred in maritime history. It's the only time that a submarine has sunk another submarine. It's only happened once. It was a British submarine sinking a German submarine off the coast of Norway. Unfortunately, the German submarine was carrying 67 tons of liquid mercury, which then sank to the bottom of the ocean. U-864, you can Google it. It's a well-known case. And so U864 joined hidden or not very well seen problem called potentially polluting wrecks. There are 8,000 wrecks around the world who went down in World War I and World War II, largely with full tanks of fossil fuels, unexploded munitions, all sorts of chemicals. And these wrecks sit at the bottom of the ocean, slowly decaying, and they're starting to break up. And we at the foundation identified this as a problem that we really felt we needed to engage with and needed to understand. And a typical potentially polluting wreck is an American ship sunk by a Japanese submarine in international waters off the coast of Vanuatu. And this problem is just too complicated for the world to deal with. We don't have the frameworks, we don't have the technology, we don't have the law, we don't have the intercultural understanding of how to deal with these problems. And so we have just let them be. And all the stakeholders in this environment understand that this is an urgent, increasingly urgent, and soon to be a critical problem. And in fact, in Chuk Lagoon in the Pacific at the moment, there is one of the first of these ships that is there is starting to leak oil into the environment now. So it's now becoming urgent. And we can all see what the future holds, because these ships were designed at a certain time, using certain defined materials. They all went down in two very narrow windows. And so they're all going to decay, and they're all going to start to explode at particular times. And that time is fast approaching. But what can money do to address this problem? So we at the foundation, that's an open question. So please, if any of you have any ideas, do feel free to approach me afterwards. But has anyone got any initial thoughts about what would money do, to solve this issue? And I've got 4 things to tell you that we have invested in, but just this is a global problem that is sitting there, and you can't get at it through international organizations, international law, and the people at the end of this particular chain are small island nations who are going to be the victims of this, because we, the legally empowered, wealthy, engineeringly sophisticated countries, can't organize ourselves to address the issue. So by way of just, anyone got any thoughts about how we might talk about that?
Start from asking the communities what they need.
Ask the communities, yeah. And for a lot of people in those communities, these wrecks are complicated because they're also dive sites. So they're also sources of revenue, and so they have a kind of immediate impact on their local economies.
I'm curious. I know that's the question you want us to ask or to answer, but I'm curious.
Sorry, could you please?
I know the question you're trying us to answer is what to do with what money can do to fix those issues. So I have a sub question for you, and maybe you don't want to address it, but
no, I'd love to.
Is that the right question to ask? I mean, we said talk to the community, so wouldn't the question to ask is what can you do or what can we do? Not put the money word in that question, because I think this may blur the conversation.
Yeah, it's a good point. I'm just trying to be me in the room, right? Which is that this is a problem, and I want to also represent funding bodies to this group to say actually it's you will do a lot of funding requests. We fund a lot of PhDs, we fund a lot of programs, so there's an endless kind of interplay. But actually, I want to ask you to think about it in a different way, which is think about how we look at it, which is actually we fund a load of PhDs and ultimately PhDs don't really or rarely impact on the world. And so when you've got a big problem like this, the question I want to ask is, what can money do? And the answer, and I just want to ask you to think like we think. But it's a good point. It's not the right question. The question is, what the hell are we going to do about these things? And I can tell you now that we don't have an answer. There's no answer to that question.
Thank you, Mr.
sorry.
Stitz. Thank you, Mr. Stitz. The thing is that as you said, this has been around there for 80 years now. Nobody has a clue what is going on. One question is, I would like to address how much problem is it for the Arctic area, because we are addressing the Arctic issues now. And I know there's 8,000 ships. We have been there. We have talked about it. But how many are there? And we know about the ones that are out on the coastal shore of Norway. We have a couple of them, actually many of them, south of Iceland that was coming from the US going to France and the UK. But the thing is that your speech is about learning from the past. And as we have not done anything in the past, so how are we learning from that past?
Yeah, this is why
I'm being tough on you now. I know that.
No, that's for you. You can be as tough on me as you like, because I'm trying to say how difficult it is to learn. So so the Arctic point, there were Arctic convoys going, obviously on the Arctic Circle to Russia. Many of those ships go down. So there is a substantial representation of potentially polluting wrecks in Arctic waters. And those are documented. We know where they are. You add to that the well-known instance of something called Operation Davy Jones's Locker, which was when the Allies walked into, I think it was Bremen, found a warehouse full of chemical weapons that the Germans had been making. And so they didn't know what to do with them. And so what they did is they loaded them up onto some ships and sank them in the Baltic Sea and off the coast of Norway. So you now have a whole series of sarin gas in canisters off the coast of Norway that are starting to be brought up by fishing vessels. So yeah, it's an Arctic problem, and we haven't really learned anything to do with that. I would say one of the interesting things, talking about Norway and learning from the past. So here's Norway in response to the U-864. Norway, the wealthiest, most engineeringly sophisticated, and interventionist sovereign state. What was the best thing they can do with U-864? Which is cover it in stones. They basically did the maritime equivalent, or marine equivalent, of sweeping it under the carpet. 67 tons of liquid mercury. Just that problem has been postponed. So yeah, it's an Arctic issue, and we haven't addressed issues of how to address it.
But Mr. Stitt, I would like to address you with another question, because now we are talking about the PPW, as we call it, which is of course a huge problem, but it's got not zero attention in Iceland actually. But I would like to ask you another question, because the LRF, and especially the heritage thing that you are presenting, we are fishery nation, and we are very focused on fishery. I would like to see and understand what you're doing when it comes to learning from the past, when it comes to safety in maritime operation, because that is what we burn from here in Iceland.
I'm very happy to address that problem, Gunnar. If I can just wrap up on the PPW issue, which is the lesson, because I wanted to say this is the past trying to teach us a lesson about the present. But I'm very happy to talk about the work that the foundation does in terms of learning about fishing funds and the investments that we're making in learning from research into the history of fishing, and particularly the history of fishing in the Arctic. So just to answer my own question, so that you understand about how do you address and what can money do to address this issue. The answer is we've invested about £1 million in this issue. And what we've got so far is to first of all, you've got to define the problem. You've got to codify it. You've got to make it. So people can look and find the information in one place, in one authoritative document. And in order to do that, we had to convene stakeholders from all over the world in a series of 4 workshops to discuss, define, and agree what the problem actually is. It's a problem statement. And we called this project Tangaroa, Tangaroa, which I do urge you to have a look at, because there's a big report that defines and describes the problem. So that was the main thing that we did, and try to draw attention to people's ideas. The second thing that we did, and so going back to the point about indigenous peoples, what we have done is to fund legal students from small island nations to attend the International Maritime Law Institute, so that they can learn the principles of maritime law themselves and and be empowered to fight their own battles in order to stand up for their own rights. And so that's what one of the things that money can do, is to fund people to go to learn the law so that they can defend themselves. And then going forward, we will continue to invest in trying to raise the profile of this issue going around the world. Have we been successful? Not at all. So there is still, we haven't managed to draw any government attention, but this time last year I was able to do a brief presentation to a room like this, and no one had really ever thought about the issue before. So I've taken the liberty of doing it again, in the hope that during the course of the next few days, it might come up in conversation with all your influential networks, and you might bring it to the attention of the people that you talk about. Now, I'm out of time, so Gunnar, I can't address your issue about the fishing SIFI, but we will do it.